Welcome to Africa's Vision Network. My name is Omar Ashaka, your guest host. Our program this evening is called Straight Talk on Black America. Our special guest is Mr. Morris Holly, a counselor for a men's shelter in Washington, D.C. This show is dedicated to our production assistant, the late Barbara McCree, and one of our cameramen, the late Raymond McCree. We dedicate this particular program to Barbara because Barbara labored in love and dedication to ensure that we had the best qualified guests who could give out the best information in regard to Africa and African American people. Although Raymond was with us only a short period of time, we admired Raymond for his tenacity to always come to the studio to try to give his best talent in being the best cameraman possible, in spite of his challenges. Because one footnote about Raymond, he lived in a shelter, but he still had a dream. So we dedicate this program to both Barbara and Raymond McCree, and their spirit will always be with us as we continue our journey with Africa's Vision Network. Morris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother.
Morris, in your opinion, how would you define the term straight talk?
I would define the term straight talk as really addressing the real issues that affect Black America, meaning black on black crime, domestic violence, issues like that.
Okay. So clearly, in your opinion, then, the time is right for straight talk on Black America.
Yeah, the time is right. In the year 2005, I was on the bus and I was coming over here, and I could see the pain in people's face as if it was 1954.
Okay, now which people, when you say...
No, okay, when I say the people, I just look at black people on the bus.
All right.
And they was coming, and they was going to, I was going to Southeast that way. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the little kids and the mothers and fathers, like, no hope. It's like they kind of, being recycled. It's like, we really need to address some things. I mean, because I looked at it, and it's like, we should be happy. So it's really time for some real straight talk on some real issues, because like I said, if we don't start really talking about some real straight issues and getting some issues that really need to be dealt with, I believe as a nation and as a group of people, we will be extinct.
And of course, when you mention Southeast, you meant Southeast Washington.
Yeah, Southeast Washington, D.C., yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you do, Morris.
I'm a counselor, and it's interesting that you mentioned that the guy was a resident of a shelter, because I work at a men's shelter in part of the richest ward in Washington, D.C., Ward 3. The shelter actually is located about 3 blocks from the Vice President's house. Mm. So, it's like the richest ward. On the one side, you got a homeless shelter, and on the other side of the street, you got doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs. Interesting. Yeah.
What's the population of African American males?
At the shelter, it's usually runs 85%. It's a very small shelter, and it's in Ward 3, and you would think it would be just the opposite, but it's not, though. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you see, Morris, when you go to work and you see these men?
And you and I were talking here briefly, and how when I go to work, I have to really transition, because I have to be, I may be that one glimmer of hope that day for that particular guy that's been out in the street all day, sitting in, public places, trying to get food stamps, trying to get IDs, things that we take for granted. Mm-hmm. And he's been told, come back tomorrow, you don't have the right papers, and so forth and so on. And he may just need a comforting word from me, or he may just need some humor, just so he can get through his night and do the same thing tomorrow. So I see a lot of hopelessness, and my job primarily is to bring just a smile to their face every day.
And translating hopelessness, you see a lot of pain?
I see a lot of pain. I was reading his article, and I will tell you about it, and it was dealing with how there's a correlation between the prison explosion and the shelter explosion. And they're saying that they go hand in hand. Guys that are in shelters are 90% prone to go to prison, and guys in prison nice to come to the shelter because there's no structure in between. You know, D.C. government, I guess other government, the federal government are recognizing that if you don't have any structure where a guy can transition to a place, then he's going to go back to jail. You know.
Now, who conducted that study? Do you know?
I don't know. I got the study off the internet. It's somebody out of the University of Pennsylvania. I do remember that.
Okay.
Yeah, and right. I just started reading it this morning, and I'm finished reading it tonight.
Okay. What do you think the people on the street see when they see homeless people, or what do they think, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, people on the street, when they see a homeless person, they see a drug addict. They see people, a thief. They see the lower echelon of life, you know.
Which is kind of interesting, though, Mars, because if I'm not mistaken, there are a number of homeless men who may have degrees. I mean, have from the gentleman Raymond, who was a cameraman for us. He was from a very well-schooled family. So it's interesting that people will look at it, they look at all the negative and not look at what they possibly could have been in terms of something positive.
Yeah, and on that note, I think we as a group or society, we tend to take the easy way out. It's easy for me to look at you and put you in a category and deal with you. Most people will come in here and say, this is a room full of black people. Automatically, based on assumption, they would operate in that, you know, they wouldn't take where Raymond, you know, Brother Omar is this, Brother Bars, you know, they would just, it's easy for us to do that. And we have been taught that, how to deal with people. So I make that point that we have been taught how to deal with the lower part of life that way. Okay. He's homeless, so he must be.
Now, and I know we're going to get back on Straight Talk, but let me piggyback on that point. On the television, for example, we had the gentleman down in Atlanta, Brian Nichols, killed several people in the courtroom. Muhammad, the sniper. Do you think what kind of impact seeing so many black men on TV, and I know part of it is the media playing their game, but in your opinion, what impact is that having on other members of society when they are around a black man?
You know, it's interesting because right down the street or up the street from Bethesda, they just built this new
Bethesda Baptist Church.
Bethesda Baptist Church over in Northeast. They just built this new facility for juvenile. And when we as a society see and hear about these kind of people, again, it just reinforces, well, you know, crazy black person. But my point, and Rena brought that in, and I tie that into to the receiving thing. If I can get you to believe that most black men are predators, it will hurt you, then wouldn't it make sense to like do something to them when they're kids? My point, and I say that to say, as far as the receiving home goes, where, you know, what they call the youth services, you know, they give these little nice names. And the other day I was standing down at the bottom of the hill and I was looking up from Bethesda on up the hill, and I was looking how they have integrated that facility into the neighborhood where it doesn't have the impact of what it actually is. What it actually is a super maximum security facility for young men. What it does, it desensitizes the neighborhood to what they're actually doing to say it's okay to punish and put them away at 16, 17. But it also says to that young fella, I'm not anything, so it's okay for me to act like a monster. You follow me?
And that's an interesting point. And that kind of leads into some of the key topics that we want to talk about with Straight Talk on Black America. First one, we're going to talk about killings in the black community. There's one that's very dear to my heart that just broke my heart, and that was when the young lady Chelsea was in the living room of her aunt, and the bullet went through the window, struck her in the head, killed her, shot her aunt. What's your perspective on the killings in black communities?
Okay. Now, that particular killing is interesting because the guys that did it, they weren't the typical bling bling, standing on the corner selling drugs these were two brothers that worked, you know, and they decided where it's okay to go get a gun and to shoot into somebody's house chasing somebody that done something to me 2 or 3 weeks ago. My point to that is like, we have created, or and I say recreated because we've allowed this mentality to take hold of society and our young people that it's okay to settle things that way. There was once a time where, you know, we could identify the criminals by what they look like, what they dress up, and I brought the 2 guys in it because they're just regular, ordinary guys, but they still think the same way.
Okay, and you bring up a good point, but let me ask you this quick question, because time is really moving on. The common denominator here, though, is the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Where are the guns coming from? Now, let me read to you something right quick from a person who's a member of the National Rifle Association. And I'm quoting him. He says, the consensus is that no more than 5 to 10 people in 100 who die by gunfire in Los Angeles are any loss to society. It would seem a valid social service to keep them well supplied with ammunition. Now, I'm doing the math here. I'm sure there are other people who think just like this. And when I see all the killings that's going on, whether it's in Washington, D.C., I was in Minneapolis, Minnesota a few months ago, and listening to the news, I would have thought I was in Washington, D.C. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, listening to the news, I would have thought I was in Washington, D.C. So this is going on in a lot of the communities. But obviously there are people who feel that black communities need to be supplied with guns so they can wipe folks out. Comment?
Yeah, you know, there are folks, and I would say they start with the president on down, because he would not or she would not have made those kind of statements unless they knew that there was no political damage to it. There's a group in society that thinks that, just like, you know, that thinks it's okay to lock us up, put us in jail, execute us, you know, and they supply us with these weapons to do that. And they create these environments where, you know, despair, hopelessness, all these other type of things, and they don't supply the people with any type of hope or skill to get out of it.
Well, and that's interesting, because what you're doing, in my opinion, you're summarizing, in my opinion, why we need straight talk on Black America. Because as you and I talked off camera, why is there so much silence with our churches? It was interesting when Chelsea was killed. There was a Virginia businessman who put up $25,000. I don't recall not one church. And I have to be, I got to be straight. I got to have straight talk here. Even my church didn't put up $1 in regard to the reward. So, why the silence with the churches? Why the silence with Black Caucus, in your opinion?
Okay. Sadly, I think most black churches are no more than black. Let me see. How can I put it? They're no more than other black corporations. You know, give you a perfect example. They didn't put up $1 for this black child that got killed. Okay, for whatever reason, but because this was politically correct to do so, every church, no matter how small, how big the congregation, or how wealthy or how poor, set up a tsunami release a thing. Yeah. They don't have no connection to those people other than that we all human beings. But when a black child gets killed in a neighborhood that's right around the corner or right around, you know, you can drive to a house, you know, you can set up, something for some people, because that, again, they're afraid. You know, I think that they're afraid to say, hey, wait a minute. This is it. We ain't going to take no more. And we're going to be in the mayor's office every day. We're going to be down the police station every day. And we're going to demand results.
Once again, Brother Holly, you make an interesting point when you talk about the tsunami relief. Obviously, there was a lot of sadness, a lot of death. And like you, it did get my attention because they wanted to contribute to folks over there, and clearly they needed it, but yet not have the, it seemed like there was a lot of silence with all these kids getting killed. Let's move on to another key component in talking about straight talk on Black America. and I'm going to tie a couple of them together because they are related. Homosexuality and AIDS, the down low. But AIDS in particular. AIDS seems like it's just really just devastating us as a group of people to the extent, obviously I'm not a Republican, but I appreciated the fact that President Bush in his State of the Union address specifically stated that AIDS is a real issue for the African American man and woman. Why are we wearing a mask when it comes to what AIDS is really doing? Not only because let me just say this too, because I went to an AIDS conference. There are those who think it's just uneducated folks getting AIDS, those who are living in poor neighborhoods. But we know that the men who are involved in the down low, educated men, I saw one, he was even a pastor. But and then there was a case whereby the gentleman's nephew, he was a deacon in a church, died from AIDS, but he wanted to lie and said he died from cancer. What's going on with that, in your opinion?
I went to an AIDS workshop about a month ago. What really struck me out of all the stuff that I learned in those 3 days, what the greatest percentage of folks being affected with AIDS, especially in Washington, D.C., is 13-year-old to 19-year-old kids, girls and boys. I said, my God, they're killing themselves at that age. And we're talking about kids that go to school every day. And, and age education and sex education is part of, I think, most schools' curricula. So it's not like they don't know. We're not talking about, a friend society. We're talking about folks that get films, see all these, and they know about wear condom, all these things. So what is going on, And I guess this kind of ties into the homosexuality issue. That, there seems to be this kind of mentality in society, and we have fed into this, black people. It's your thing. It's okay to do what you want to do, And we are steadily killing ourselves morally and physically because of there's no boundaries in things, I mean, somebody needs to say, hey, that's not all right.
And again, you're hitting on a very interesting point, because this is Omar's opinion, and I don't have all the data to support it, but here's what concerns me. You talked earlier, 20, 30 years down the road, will there be African-American people? Now, if you look at, let's do the math. If you look at the young men in prison, you look at the homosexuals, you look at those who are dying of AIDS, you look at girls' lesbianism, how can a group of people continue to produce? Some folks were shocked that the Hispanic population has now exceeded the African-American population. It didn't shock me. I mean, you got to have, reproduction in order for a population to continue to grow. And I'm going to use an example. I was talking to my daughter, who's a student at Hampton University, and I had found out that there was an issue, whether it's fact, I'm not sure, but there was some discussion that AIDS was on the campus. And my daughter, who's a nursing major, said, well, I said, can you give me some feedback on that? She said, well, I'm not surprised because of the ratio of boys and girls, young men and young women. So these young guys, there are so few men on the campus. And so this lesbianism with women, and by no means am I supporting that. But that's why I'm saying that this thing about Straight Talk on America, we recently, Urban League released their report, as you know, on the state of Black America. I haven't read all of it, on the excerpts, but I didn't see anything really focusing in on lesbianism, AIDS, prison population, the down low. And I get a little emotional about that because we got a serious problem, but once again, I don't think we're doing the straight talk that we need to do. And I got a straight talk question for you. There's a lot in the news about us. This was in the paper today. NAACP leaders Julian Bond and Dennis Cortland Hayes, they blasted Bush because Bush said that, as you know, he's pushing these private accounts rather than Social Security. In summary, Bush is saying that private accounts would be great for blacks because blacks die early. And with private accounts, it can be passed on to the heirs. Now, Julian Bond, who I have a lot of respect for, I don't know much about Dennis Cortland Hayes, but I guess the question I would have, Morris, just to get your opinion, was Bush making a straight talk comment by saying blacks die early, or was it some other mission, in your opinion, why he said that? I mean, other than the fact we know he wants to push private account, but the question is when he says that black folks die early.
I mean, in my opinion, he was making a correct statistical statement. We die early. Now, why he said it, I don't know, but but that's a fact. But I was thinking about this, and to me, all this is foolishness. What I mean by that is like we as black people, we are still begging, we are still asking, we are still doing things that we can do for ourselves. We pay too much attention on what somebody's not doing for us, and not enough attention on what we could do for us. I read 2 articles, and they were very interesting. One was written in 1977, the other was written in 1987, and they were written by 2 think tank organizations. And what they came to the conclusion is that black America has the spending power where we would be the 7th or the 8th largest industrial nation. We're not about world third, world another country. We're talking about we would be part of the G7s, all them type people. Why are we still begging? We got plenty of money. We need to learn how to invest our money. If we take $1 a day for all the black people to work and invest it just in just black, all these old friends organization, can you imagine how the impact we could have on the Chryslers, all them type of things? My issue is like, we need to quit this foolishness and start doing things for ourselves. And we wouldn't have to be concerned about what Bush thinks about it, what the rifle people,
Mm-hmm. Well, and I will give Julian Bond and Dennis Cortland Hayes their due. They did say that Bush maybe should concentrate on why black people are dying early, and that's a valid point. But you talk about the money, because let's be clear on that too, because that could be part of our problem. I can't remember his last name, but it was a doctor who lived out in Mitchellville, Maryland, a very well-established doctor, got killed in his driveway. So that's another problem that African Americans have. So this is everybody's problem. Just because some people, as you know, are doing so-called well, as I heard someone say, at one time maybe the crime was concentrated in certain areas, but crime now is just, it's mobile. So I think that's another issue for some of us as African Americans who think that, okay, I've arrived and I don't need to be concerned about those young boys who are doing it. It has to be a partnership with everyone, I think. Because I was talking to a friend, I'll give you another example, especially when it comes to the little girls. One of the biggest concerns I have as a father is, will my daughter be able to find a young African-American male? And I know there's diversity, people, a lot of interracial dating, but everybody may not want to do that. And so we are raising our little girls to be pretty and be well educated, and they have a challenge when it comes to men. Let's look at Arthur Keyes. I can't think of his first name. Alan Keyes. He's raised his daughter well. She comes out, she's gay. But my point is, too, the impact, what's going on with young African-American men and men in general, because as I said before, too, the men who are older, because we got some men doing some foolishness who are older men. So with those put together, all those ingredients, what's your prognosis for Black America?
I still have hope. I often say to myself, it didn't take us 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 years, 200 to get here. So, and all this, I still see hope. I'm reminded of the passage in the Bible where it says all things. So I believe that this is part of our all things. Meaning that this is part of the process of us coming out. Because every time we go through a process, I think we learn. I often say that when we have people like Bush and Nixon and all these kind of stuff, it's good for us. You know, we should learn every time there's a Watergate. We should learn every time there's somebody invades another country. We should learn from, like, we need to start doing for ourselves. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I've always said that what we've allowed ourselves to do as people is become mush. You know, there was a time when black folk taught, they raved, they didn't beg, you know. We were able to do more with less back then than now. You know, we got all these doctors, lawyers, and we ain't creating no more hospitals, you know, no more stuff like that. That concerns me.
Well, and see, what's interesting too, though, Brother Holly, is that at one time there was really a need for us as a group of people from the physical labor perspective. But here's what concerns me. With computer technology, with outsourcing to foreign countries, India and China, with robots in the future, it's definitely going to be tough for African Americans who have not prepared themselves with education or some type of financial planning, because the system is changing now for us. And like you, thank God I'm a Christian, so I do have hope. But I know we have to have a little more hope. We also have to do the work, as you know. And this is why I think the message has to get out there that Jesse Jackson, when Jesse Jackson found out that he had this child, my goal to talk about it among our men was not to bash him, not to judge him, but so that we could learn from that. And then it was said that, well, we're not going to let anybody bother Jesse. But that's not the right message. Because maybe if somebody had focused on Jesse, then maybe Kobe Bryant wouldn't be in the position that he's in. But Brother Holly, time has just really just been flying. And, but I want to give you, last couple, maybe minute or two, just to make a few comments about this Straight Talk on Black America. Real brief, how would you close?
I would close to say, you were talking about Jesse and how we dealt with those kind of things. We as black people need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Meaning we need to demand out of our merchants the best. We need to demand out of our leaders the best. You know, it's not all right for me to go into a black store and it's not clean. It's not all right, We as people need to say we are great and we demand,
Let me close. I'm sorry to cut you off, but time is going on. I want to thank you very much, okay?
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for looking tonight.
Thank you.